Okay, thank you so much. This is Team Diplomats. And as you can see, we are 8 members from different countries, but we are 21st century diplomats from Africa who are really ready to advise the African Union on the practical solutions to the challenges that affect Africa. Okay, the question that we were given, it is that the general image of Africa in the mid-1990s is that of a region with the enormous potential to be an economic giant in the world. However, on the world stage, Africa still stands out as a continent plagued by civil and political conflict, poor economic performance, and deepening poverty. As aspiring diplomats, the African Union has asked us now as a team to provide practical solutions to change the narratives for Africa. So go to the next page. So before we first go to tackle the question, we need first to understand what is Africa paradigm. The African paradigm certainly is unchangeable, that the story of Africa, which is one that does not look promising or befitting considering the enormous resources it has in its possession. For as such, as a blessed continent, to remain plagued with the political and regional instability, acts of terrorism, conflicts and wars, food crisis, and worsening socio-economic structures begs the question, the extent of efficient utilization and management of the continent resources. So go to the next slide. So according to Kwame Nkrumah, Africa is a paradox which illustrates and highlights neocolonialism. Her earth is rich, yet the products that come from above and below the soil continues to enrich not Africans predominantly, but groups and individuals who operate to Africans' impoverishment. Next page, please. So as diplomats, we are offering practical solutions in 3 thematic areas. That is political solutions, economic solutions, and social solutions to provide actually the way forward for the African Union to move the continent in a development path. Next page. So under the political solutions, we have realized that the African Union remains amorphous in defense of chronic political instability on the continent and the weaknesses of democratic institutions, recurrent coups, violation of constitutions and fundamental freedoms, electoral tampering, post-electoral crisis. Therefore, to provide now a solution and these political solutions through the African Union, we propose the political solutions as follows. African Union needs first to conduct civic education about the unification of Africa using the 4 major languages spoken in Africa. That is the English language for the African-speaking countries, then the French language for the French-speaking countries, and then Arabic, and for also the Arabic-speaking countries. And we propose also Kiswahili as one of the languages that can help in to disseminate the message about the unification of Africa in the African continent. So we believe that once awareness is created about the unification of Africa in every African state, then unification will be relevant, and that can be spearheaded by the African Union. So after creating awareness in the states through state structures, we believe that with that, African Union can go ahead now to build now the institutions, because we believe that institutions that can now develop resolutions and treaties that deals with the presidential term limits, because we have realized that in Africa, one of the major issues which is so much affecting Africans, the political growth is that most of the countries in Africa do not have presidential term limits. For instance, countries like Uganda, you find that the president can contest as many times as he wishes. Countries like Cameroon. So you realize that in such countries where there are no presidential term limits, you find that there are always political unrest in such countries. So we believe that once the institutions, the resolutions, and the treaties that deal with the presidential term limits have been generated through African Union, such issues of political unrest, coups will automatically be reduced in such countries, because when you compare countries like Kenya, where there are term limits, Tanzania, South Africa, you'll find that there is some sort of political stability and progress in such countries. So we believe that the African Union needs to build the strong institutions that provide resolutions and also implement treaties that deal with such issues. Then also under that very issue, we also feel that to avoid also the issues of military coups that have been also coming up so much in African continent. For instance, in countries like Mali, Burkina Faso, we feel that still African Union needs to develop still resolutions and treaties that deal with such coups in African continent, and also have even sanctions that deter such acts of military coups in African countries. Because most importantly, with the coups, should be the focus of the African Union bloc in a cutting of foreign influence, using the vast economic wealth as a geopolitical winner asset. Because we have realized that that is one of the major areas that brings in now, foreign influence in most of the African countries. Wherever we have conflicts in the continent, military coups, then there's always dominance of foreign influence, using the vast economic wealth as a geopolitical winner asset. Then also, besides that, we propose that there should be always also rule of law using African Union, by codifying the legal frameworks that empower African Union now to carry out its responsibilities in unifying African continent, and also to move the continent in a development path, and also in growth and peace in the continent. Then we propose also security sector reforms to provide for African Union Army, because you will realize that wherever there is a conflict in Africa, African Union does not have its own army. So there is need now to generate sectoral reforms that will provide for African Union independent army that will be in position to deal with the political instabilities in the continent, and also even military coups that have always come in most of the African countries. So we go to the next page. So under the economic solutions, we are also proposing practical solutions. So for instance, developing a single currency and free trade area policies within the African continent. Because we have realized that in Africa, we have potential. There is a potential for Africa to do business within the continent. But because of lack of policies that provide for a single currency and also free trade agreement within the continent, you find that the continent is still lags behind. So there is need now to emerge all the regional economic communities into one in order to create a common market for African product, regardless of the regions. Because currently we realize that there are regional economies. For instance, the ECOWAS, you find that in East Africa, there is the East African community. All these regional economic blocks are not moving the country forward. But now, in order to bring the continent to grow in an economic perspective. So we feel that there is need for African Union to develop a single currency that will motivate trade and also facilitate trade within the continent, and also provide policies for free trade within the continent. So that is one of the economic solutions that we are proposing as the 21st diplomats. Then also there is need to enhance industrialization agenda in the African continent through public-private partnerships, and also cutting off tax incentives, hence reducing the excessive pressure on fiscal space and ensuring fiscal spending discipline and employment opportunities creation in the continent. Because we have realized that could be the best for African continent to develop. But you'll find that industrialization agenda in the African continent still remains low, because we don't have a unifying industrialization agenda that will now unify all the 55 countries in Africa to engage into industrialization development. So we feel that once this kind of initiative is taken through public-private partnerships and also cutting off taxes that also deter industrialization in Africa, there will be increased employment opportunities in Africa, reduce also spending on the unnecessary expenditures because of importing goods from other countries, most especially in Europe and in the United States. But once this industrialization agenda is enhanced, Africa will be in a position to move forward in industrial paths. Then also we propose also public service delivery to alleviate poverty and improve livelihoods in the African continent. Because we have realized that poverty is one of the issues which is really making African continent to lag behind. But once there is improved public service delivery under the African Union as the unifying body in Africa, then there will be a room to alleviate poverty and improve livelihoods in the African continent. We'll go to the next page.
All right, so you have 1 minute.
Okay, thank you. So now, under the social solutions, we also propose enacting religious activities regulation. It must be said without fear that religion is increasingly becoming an avenue for dubious monetary extortion, aside the potential legality arguments that surrounds the access to opinion. The reason for of religious activities lies with the fact that they should be registered as limited by guarantee, not by shares. Then also enact political campaign financing policy. There must be a holistic agreement on financing of political campaigns, as this is a major source of state corruption, money laundering, illicit businesses on the political financing regulation. Then the next page. In conclusion, to ensure the achievements of its objectives and the Pan-African vision of integrated, prosperous, and peaceful Africa, AU needs to develop a strategic framework for Africa's socio-economic and inclusive transformation with greater collaboration and support to African-led initiatives to ensure that the aspirations of African populations are taken into account. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you so much. Thank you, Vincent, for the presentation. Team, that's a very powerful, strong presentation from the team. Any question, any contribution, any suggestion, we have 5 minutes to do that. And then the next presentation will come from the team, Dimachi. So get you ready for that. But any question, any contribution, at the same time, we can also use our emotions to clap, congratulate, and all that. Good, good. Yes, question for you from Jerome.
Yeah, Thank you. Well, it's again a very good presentation, very clear. I have a question. You mentioned, of course, that the African Union should develop a strategic framework. Yeah, you propose several resolutions or solutions, sorry, but who would be the main driver of those solutions? Will it be the African Union, or will it be civil society, or maybe the states, or maybe even the United Nations? Because, as it stands now, the African Union is, of course, not that capable. What do you think would be the best solution? Who would be the driver for all those changes that are probably necessary to move forward?
Okay, thank you so much for the question, Professor. I feel the main driver for these solutions that we have so far proposed, it is the African Union, because we feel that the African Union needs to take a responsibility to spearhead the African development trajectory and unification agenda, because we feel that under all the solutions that we have proposed, that we have segmented under political, economic, and social, African Union has the responsibility to adopt those resolutions and take further action to unify the continent and also to lead the development agenda of the Africa as a continent. So maybe one of my colleagues can add on.
No, that's a good response, Vincent. A question for you too. Again, now you had suggested that in times of conflicts within the African region, the African Union do not have a permanent army, and so your group was recommending that we should have a standing army for the African Union. Do you think, or does the group think it's a laudable idea to have a standing army of the African Union, since the African Union and its mandate, it's not necessarily a country, and so they don't have a sovereign power over nations? How practical was the recommendation of having a permanent army of the African Union, other than the current structure where countries will send a portion of their army to support the African Union peace process? Any response from you or the rest of the team members?
Okay, let me first respond, then maybe my colleagues can add on. Yeah, based on our presentation, one of the first resolution that we have stated is that there is need to carry out first civic education on unification of Africa. So we feel that once the agenda of unification of Africa comes into as one body, the African Union will not go ahead now to develop policies that provide for for African Union army, a standby army that will be in a position to deal with conflicts in the continent. So we feel that there is need first to carry out the civic education currently in the whole of the African continent countries, that is the 55 countries in Africa. Then after that, develop now the policy that provides now for a joint standby army to deal with the conflicts in the continent. So maybe one of my colleagues, can you add on that?
Okay. Anybody want to chance on from your group to respond? All right. So if there is no other comment or contribution from any of the group members, once again, please let's unmute and give a round of applause.
But maybe before that, Doctor, there is a question on the chat.
Oh, great.
Excellence. That Excellence is asking about religious enactments. So maybe let me just respond to Excellence. Yeah, on the issue of religious enactments regulations, we have realized that it is the issue of religion in Africa. It is one of the social issues in Africa. But you'll find that there are so many mushrooming religious sects in Africa that have resulted into the vices of like money laundering, extortion from even their fellow followers. That is what most of the organizations are doing, the religious institutions are doing in Africa. But what we are proposing under that to regulate such acts of money laundering, extortion, we propose that these religious institutions should be registered as limited by guarantee, such that when they are registered as limited by guarantee, the guarantee is that someone comes into the organization to believe maybe in God, but having a right of exit. But now when it is registered as a company or limited by shares, that is where there is a problem in most of the African religious institutions now, because someone registered a religious institution as a limited by shares, which is more of a business. So with research, it affects really the real mission of religion in Africa. So we propose that there should be a joint regulation in the continent that provides for registration of religious institutions as limited by guarantee, not as limited by shares.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Vincent, for the clarification, and thank you all. And once again, please let's unmute ourselves and let's give the team a round of applause for a very powerful presentation.